November 1942, the first major American offensive of the war in Europe. The target? Their oldest ally. American troops stormed the beaches of North Africa, expecting to be greeted as liberators. Instead, the Vichy French fought back, fiercely. This is the shocking, bloody story of when friends started shooting at them. November 8th, 1942. 4:30 a.m. The Atlantic, off the coast of Fedala, French Morocco. The darkness is cold, wet, and absolute. Inside the rattling steel box of the LCVP the Higgins boat, the air is thick with the smell of diesel fumes, salt water, and nervous sweat. For the men of Major General George S. Patton's 3rd Infantry Division, this is it, the big show, their first combat operation, PFC. Russell Johnson, a 20-year-old from Ohio, shifts his weight, the heavy M1 Garand digging into his shoulder. His wool uniform is stiff with dried salt spray. He can hear the man next to him, a kid from Brooklyn, breathing in short, sharp hitches. The boat rises on another massive Atlantic swell, hangs for a sickening moment, and then crashes back down, sending a fresh cascade of icy water over the gunwales. This isn't supposed to be a real invasion. That's what the officers had told them. The briefing aboard the USS Leonard Wood had been almost polite. "Gentlemen, we are not invading France," the battalion colonel had explained, his pointer tapping a map of the Moroccan coast. "We are landing on French territory to assist our allies in liberating themselves from the German boot." They were told the Vichy French, while officially neutral, were just waiting for a strong hand to join. They'd been issued phrase books. "Nous sommes vos amis. We are your friends." Some men had invasion currency francs in their pockets, ready to buy eggs or a bottle of wine from a grateful populace. General Eisenhower's voice had crackled over the ship's loudspeakers just hours before, broadcasting a message to the French people of North Africa. "We come to you as friends. We are here to repel the invaders who would enslave you." The invasion fleet, Task Force 34, is a massive armada, but as it approached the coast, it did so with a strange, hesitant caution. No pre-landing bombardment. No softening up of the beaches. You don't shell your friends. 30 seconds, the coxswain yells, his voice barely a pinprick against the roar of the surf and the thrum of the engine. Russell Johnson peers over the steel ramp. He can just make out the shorelinear darker mass against the pre-dawn sky, punctuated by the white line of the breakers. He sees the silhouette of the Grand Casino de Fedala on the low bluff overlooking the beach. It's all quiet. Too quiet. "Maybe they're all asleep," the Brooklyn kid mutters, his voice trembling. "Maybe," Russell says, chambering around. His hands are numb. Then, the night splits open. A single, brilliant white beamer searchlight lashes out from the shore. It sweeps the darkness, finds the first wave of landing craft, and holds them, pinning them like insects to a board. For a half-second, nobody breathes. Crump, whoosh. A sound unlike anything Russell has ever heard. A tearing, screaming whistle passes directly over their boat. A geyser of water, 50 feet high, erupts just behind them. "They're firing," someone screams. "They're F-times cucking firing at us." Crump, whoosh. This one is short. The shell hits the water 20 yards in front of the boat, and the resulting explosion lifts the LCVP's bow clear out of the sea. Men are thrown against the bulkheads. "Get us in! Get us in now!" a lieutenant bellows. The beach explodes. Red and green tracers, lazy and beautiful for a fraction of a second, begin lacing the air from machine gun nests hidden in the villas and the casino. The heavy thump, thump, thump of a 37mm gun opens up, firing point blank at the approaching boats. The French aren't asleep. They're not collaborators. They're not their friends. Ramp down. The boat grinds to a halt on a sandbar, still 70 yards from the beach. The steel ramp crashes down into the churning surf. The two men at the front, silhouetted against the muzzle flashes, are cut down instantly. They don't scream. They just disintegrate in a hail of machine gun fire. "Go, go, go!" Russell Johnson doesn't wait. He vaults over the side, not the ramp, plunging into chest-deep, freezing water. The shock of the cold is so intense he almost forgets the bullets. The weight of his pack and ammunition belt tries to drag him under. He slogs forward, his M1 held high over his head, the man next to him suddenly crying out and disappearing beneath the waves. He stumbles onto the wet sand, gasping, and crawls behind a low dune. The beach is chaos. Men are dying in the water. Landing craft are burning, hit by French 75mm guns, firing from batteries near the port. The surf is red. A private, his face a mask of white terror, crawls up next to Russell. He's holding his phrasebook in his hand, soaked and useless. "I don't understand." The private whimpers, staring at the tracers flying from the casino. They're French. Russell just shoves a fresh clip into his Garand. He can see the muzzle flash from the machine gun nest. Friend or not, they were here, and they were being slaughtered. "On your feet, private, move." The voice belongs to Lieutenant Miller, the man who'd bellowed at the coxswain. He's already up, miraculously unharmed, dragging the terrified private with the phrasebook to his feet. "We're friends when we stop getting shot at. First platoon, on me. We're taking that goddamn casino." The Casino de Fedala is a large, white, Moorish-style resort. It's supposed to be a symbol of seaside luxury. Right now, it's a fortress. Hotchkiss machine guns are spitting fire from its arched windows, scything down the men still struggling in the surf. "Johnson, Baker, Harris, you see that nest on the right flank, the one in that cabana?" Miller points with his. "45 automatic. Suppress it. Now." Russell Johnson doesn't think. He just reacts. He belly crawls to the high tide line, the wet sand sucking at his uniform. The noise is a physical waiter constant, pressing roar of gunfire, shouting, and the hydraulic hiss of waves. He finds a dip in the sand, rests his M1 on the berm, and takes aim. Flash. He sees the muzzle flash from the cabana. He squeezes the trigger. The Garand bucks hard against his shoulder. Ping. The rifle ejects its empty clip with a sharp, metallic sound that is instantly iconic. He slams in another. "Reloading," he screams, mostly to himself. To his left, Harris, a BAR gunner, opens up. The BAR's deep, rhythmic chug-chug-chug is a comforting bass line in the sharp-toothed orchestra of rifle fire. The tracers from the BAR slam into the concrete cabana, chipping off chunks. "I'm moving," Russell yells, "and he's up." He runs low and fast, zigzagging for 10 yards before diving back into the sand. The air is alive with hornets. He feels a sharp thwack against the shovel on his pack, a ricochet that spins him half around. He keeps going. This isn't an exercise. This isn't a welcome. This is a battle. They leapfrog like this for 50 yards. Crawl, run, dive, fire. The machine gun in the cabana swivels toward them. Russell can see the gunner now, a dark shape behind the spitting flame. He's wearing a helmet, but it's not the German Stahlhelm. It's the fluted Adrian helmet of the French army. "We are your friends." The private from the boat, the one Miller dragged, is screaming, almost in hysterics, as he fires his own M1 wildly from the hip. "Stop shooting! Nous sommes vos amis." A single round from the Hotchkiss punches through the private's chest. He drops his rifle, looks down at the dark, blossoming stain, and falls face first into the sand. A cold, pure rage replaces Russell's fear. He's on his feet, not even crouching, walking forward and firing. Ping, reload, fire. He sees the French gunner slump over his weapon. He reaches the cabana, Harris right behind him. Russell kicks in the flimsy door. Inside, it stinks of cordite and hot metal. 3 French soldiers are dead. The gunner is draped over his Hotchkiss. Another man is clutching his stomach, his blue-grey eyes wide with shock. He looks at Russell and says something in French. It sounds like a question. Russell just stares at him. This is the alley he was supposed to liberate. The man coughs, blood flecking his lips, and then lies still. "Jesus Christ," Harris mutters, looking at the dead men. They're dressed just like the ones in the World War I movies. The fight is far from over. Out on the water, all hell is breaking loose. The main shore battery at Pont Blondin, a few miles up the coast, has found the range of the transport ships. Massive, 138.6mm shells naval gunsar bracketing the fleet. Suddenly, a sound bigger than anything yet terrifying, freight train roar splits the sky. A column of water the size of a building erupts near a destroyer, the USS Murphy. It's not the French, it's the USS Augusta, Admiral Hewitt's flagship, and it's joined by the cruiser, USS Brooklyn. They are firing their main batteries, not at the beach, but over the beach. The 8-inch and 6-inch shells pass overhead with a scream that feels like it's tearing the air in half. They are dueling with the French shore batteries. The ground shakes as the shells land, miles away, with dull, massive concussions. With the machine guns in the casino and villas being taken out one by one, the beach is becoming less of a killing floor. But now, French armoured vehicles are joining the fight. A tiny, almost comical-looking Renault R-35 tank clatters down the promenade, its short 37mm gun-firing canister shot at the scattered infantry. Men yell for a bazooka weapon so new, most of them have only seen it in training films. As the first, weak light of dawn breaks, it reveals a scene of complete carnage. The tide is going out, leaving behind a grim tapestry of bodies, wrecked equipment, and burning landing craft. The white walls of the casino are pockmarked with bullet holes and stained with smoke. The 3rd Division has its foothold, but it has cost them hundreds of men, and the men who've survived, like Russell Johnson, now look inland with a new, bitter understanding. Every Frenchman with a rifle is an enemy. The liberation of North Africa has begun not with cheers and wine, but with powder and blood. The sun, when it finally rises, is a sickly orange, filtered through the thick black smoke pouring from a burning landing craft. It illuminates the full horror of Red Beach. The sand is littered with the dead, both American and French. Wrecked boats wallow in the surf, their ramps down like open mouths. Empty. PFC. Russell Johnson is huddled with what's left of his platoon behind the pockmarked wall of the casino. Lieutenant Miller is using a dead Frenchman's map case as a makeshift command post. The fight for the beach is over, but the fight for Fedala has just begun. "All right, listen up," Miller barks, his face streaked with grime. "HQ says the harbour is still hot. The frogs have machine gun nests in the cranes and are using their own goddamn harbour defence guns against us. We're moving to clear the port. 2nd Platoon will swing around and take the villas. We're going straight down the promenade." "Straight down? Harris? The BAR gunner?" "Spitz. Sir, that's a bowling alley." "That's the order, Sergeant. To move is to invite death. French snipers are active now, firing from the balconies of seaside apartments and the steeple of a small church. The pop of their Lebel rifles is sharp and distinct. The Americans, trained for open warfare, are clumsy in this urban maze. They move in bunches, and they pay for it. Russell kicks open the door of a small cafe. The tables are still set for breakfast. A French colonial soldier, a tirailleur Senegalais in a red fez, rises from behind the bar, his bayonet fixed. He lunges. Russell, too surprised to aim, fires his M1 from the hip. The 30-06 round hits the man in the chest and throws him backward into a pyramid of bottles. He lands in a shower of glass and spilled wine. Russell stands there, breathing hard, the smell of alcohol mixing with the metallic tang of blood. This man, a soldier from Senegal, died for Vichy France, fighting an American who came to liberate him. The absurdity is staggering. Outside, the battle has escalated. The air no longer just whistles with bullets, it shrikes with artillery. The naval engagement offshore has become a full-blown fleet action. The French are not just resisting, they are counter-attacking. Aboard the USS Augusta, Rear Admiral Hewitt is in a desperate duel. He can see the French destroyer Milan and 2 others, Albatros and l'Alcyon, steaming out of Casablanca harbour, 15 miles to the south. They are coming at the American fleet, guns blazing. This is not a token defence. This is a sortie. Simultaneously, the massive 194mm guns of the El Hank Batrith Primary Coastal Defence of Casablanca open fire. These are naval guns, set in concrete, with a range of over 20 miles. Their first salvos are terrifyingly accurate. A giant waterspout, 1,000 feet high, brackets the USS Brooklyn. Shrapnel from the near-miss rains down on the deck. "They've got our range," a spotter yells. The Americans are in a bind. Their primary mission is to protect the transports, the soft-skinned ships still unloading thousands of men, including General Patton himself. But now they are in a pitched battle with a determined French navy. "Engage those destroyers," Hewitt orders. The Augusta and Brooklyn turn their main batteries away from the shore targets and focus on the approaching French warships. The sound is apocalyptic. The 8-inch guns of the Augusta fire in a deafening, rolling broadside. On the beach, the GIs can only watch in awe and terror. The entire horizon is erupting in flashes of orange fire and columns of black smoke. They can see the naval shells, looking like small, dark footballs, arcing across the sky. "Get your heads down." Miller screams as a stray 6-inch shell, fired from the Brooklyn at the Milan, falls short and explodes in the water just 200 yards offshore. The concussion wave hits the beach like a solid object, knocking men flat. The French sailors fight with a suicidal courage that stuns the Americans. The destroyer, Fougo, hit repeatedly by American cruisers, burns furiously, but keeps firing until it capsizes. The destroyer Boulonnais is blown apart by a direct hit from the Brooklyn and sinks with 300 men. The flagship Milan, riddled with shells and on fire, beaches itself to avoid sinking. On shore, this naval courage is mirrored by the harbour defenders. French sailors, their ships trapped in port, have unbolted their 75mm and 100mm guns and are firing them at point-blank range into the advancing American infantry. It's a butcher's shop. Russell and his squad are pinned down by one such gun, hidden inside a warehouse. They can't move. Every time they try, the 75mm fires a canister round, spraying a cone of lethal steel balls down the street. "Bazooka!" Miller screams. "Where is the goddamn bazooka?" A 2-man team crawls forward. The operator, a lanky kid from Tennessee, shoulders the new, mysterious weapon. He fires. The 2.36-inch rocket streaks across the street with a whoosh and explodes against the warehouse wall, leaving a small, disappointing hole. "It didn't work," Harris yells. "Fire again. Aim for the opening." The bazooka team reloads. They fire again. This time, the rocket flies true, right through the gun port. There is a bright flash, followed by a secondary explosion. A gout of black smoke billows from the warehouse. Silence. "Move up!" Russell is the first one in. The inside is a mess of mangled steel and dead French sailors in their distinctive white backies with the red pom-poms. By 10 a.m., the Fedala harbour is finally, mostly, secure. The surviving GIs, exhausted, deafened, and utterly bewildered, begin to take stock. They had been told to expect a parade. They got a war. They had come as friends, but they had spent the last 6 hours killing hundreds of men they had expected to liberate. And it wasn't over. The main objective, Casablanca, was still defiant. The El Hank battery was still firing. And the largest, most powerful warship in Africa, the French battleship Jean Bart, was sitting in the harbour, silent. Its 15-inch guns, among the largest in the world, were aimed at the American fleet. And they were about to speak. 11 a.m. Casablanca harbour, 15 miles south of Fedala. Aboard the French battleship Jean Bart, Captain Pierre Barjot watches the horizon. His ship is a wounded giant, incomplete, and a prisoner in its own port. Since the fall of France in 1940, she has sat here, unfinished, a potent symbol of French power, neutralized. She has no engines, no secondary armament, but she has one, fully functional quadruple 15-inch gun turret, and it is aimed at the American fleet. The Jean Bart had been damaged by British torpedo bombers at this very dock just 2 years earlier, during the Royal Navy's attack on the French fleet at Mers el-Kebir. The French Navy has not forgotten that betrayal by its former ally. Now, another ally is on the horizon, shelling their coast and sinking their destroyers. Captain Barjot will not let this new insult pass. He gives the order. Ouvrez le feu. Open fire. Deep within the armoured turret, 4 massive 15-inch 380mm guns elevate. With a deafening, earth-shattering K-thwum, the turret unleashes a 3,500-pound broadside. The concussion blows out windows for a mile around the harbour. Aboard the USS Augusta, Admiral Hewitt is busy dodging salvos from the L. Hank battery when the spotter screams into his microphone. "New target! My God, Admiral, it's the battleship. Jean Bart is firing." The American command staff is stunned. Intelligence had assured them the Jean Bart was non-operational, a useless hulk. Ush! 4 colossal geysers, white columns the size of skyscrapers, erupt from the sea, perfectly bracketing the heavy cruiser USS Augusta. The salvos are dead on. The French are using radar-directed fire control. Hard to port. All engines full. Hewitt roars. He knows his cruiser cannot survive a duel with a 15-inch gun battleship. His ship's 8-inch shells would bounce off her armor like pebbles. "Signal Massachusetts," Hewitt orders. "Engage Jean Bart. Engage Jean Bart at will." This is the moment. This is why the brand-new battleship USS Massachusetts, Big Mamie, is here. Commanded by Captain Francis P. Spike Gannon, the Massachusetts has been waiting for this. For the first time in its history, an American battleship is about to engage a modern European battleship. The Massachusetts turns its 9 16-inch guns toward the harbour. These guns fire a 2,700-pound armour-piercing shell, the heaviest in the world, even larger than the Jean Bart's. Target acquired. Range, 28,000 yards. Fire for effect. From his foxhole on the Fedala Promenade, PFC, Russell Johnson hears the 2 distinct sounds. First is the deep, chest-caving boom of the Jean Bart from the south. Seconds later, he hears the screaming, freight train whistle of its 15-inch shells passing high overhead. He flinches, instinctively covering his head, as they land with terrifying splashes out in the fleet. Then, from the fleet, comes the answer, a thunderclap that is deeper, heavier, and angrier. It's the Massachusetts. He can see the flashes on the horizon like a summer storm. This is a duel of gods, and he is just an ant caught in the middle. "Holy shit," Harris breathes next to him, staring at the sky. "They're really trying to sink him." Aboard the Jean Bart, the French sailors work with desperate, patriotic fury. They are immobile, they are exposed, and they are returning fire. They get off 7 salvos. But the Massachusetts is a state-of-the-art warship with the world's most advanced radar fire control, and she is angry. At 11:28 a.m., a 16-inch shell from Big Mamie finds its mark. The 2,700-pound projectile, traveling at supersonic speed, hits the Jean Bart on the starboard side. It punches clean through the 6-inch armoured deck, penetrates deep into the ship's bowels, and explodes in the 6-inch magazine. The resulting explosion is catastrophic. A second 16-inch shell hits the rotating barbette of the 15-inch turret. It doesn't penetrate the 7-inch thick armour, but the kinetic force is so immense it jams the turret's turning mechanism. The Jean Bart's only weapon is silenced. The duel is over in less than 30 minutes. The French battleship is burning, listing, and out of the fight. On the ground, the GIs feel the change. The terrifying boom from Casablanca has stopped. Lieutenant Miller, using field glasses, scans the southern horizon. He can see a pillar of thick, black smoke rising from the port. "Well, boys," he says, lowering the glasses, "looks like our Navy just did its job. Now we get to do ours." The immediate threat from the sea is gone, but the GIs of the 3rd Division are still on the outskirts of Fedala. Between them and their main objective of Casablanca lie 15 miles of hostile territory, defended by thousands of angry French colonial troops, artillery batteries, and a tank regiment. General Patton, having finally landed, is apoplectic. The diplomatic welcome has failed. The gentleman's agreement is void. He is not an envoy, he is an invader. And he is about to unleash the full, mechanized fury of the United States Army on the Allies, who dared to shoot at him. Major General George S. Patton, Jr., is finally ashore. He wades through the surf at Fedala, his famous ivory-handled revolvers strapped to his waist, his face a mask of thunder. The landing is hours behind schedule. His men are dead on the beaches. His fleet is in a shooting war. The pre-invasion intelligence, which suggested a token resistance at best, is now soaked in American blood. God damn it! He roars at a sodden aide. Did anyone tell these bastards we're the good guys? He establishes his command post in the lobby of the Miramar Hotel, just yards from where Russell Johnson's platoon had fought. He is not here to negotiate. He is here to conquer. Get me General Noguez on the line, he demands, referring to the Vichy French resident general in Morocco. Tell him to surrender, or I'll wipe Casablanca off the map. But the French have no intention of surrendering. The diplomat has failed. The warrior must now take over. Patton's plan is simple. His armoured force, Combat Command B under General Gaffney, will swing south and east to encircle Casablanca, while his infantry, including the 3rd Division, will advance directly down the main coastal road and take the city by frontal assault, for PFC. Russell Johnson, the grand strategy means one thing: more walking and more fighting. Up and at 'em. Lieutenant Miller yells, kicking the wall Russell is leaning against. We're moving. Objective is Casablanca. Let's go. The platoon, now less than 2/3 its original strength, falls into a grim, shuffling column. They leave the smoking wreckage of Fedala behind, moving southwest on the dusty, 2-lane road. The air is hot now, the African sun beating down. The smell of the sea is replaced by the smell of dust, diesel fumes from their few supporting M3 Stuart light tanks, and the sweet, cloying odour of death. They pass small Arab dues collections of mud brick homesware. Locals stare with wide, impassive eyes. A few children wave, but the adults just watch. They have seen conquerors before. The advance is not a route, it's a grind. The French are not running. They are executing a professional, textbook fighting withdrawal. About 3 miles outside Fedala, the column halts. 100 yards ahead, the road is blocked. The French have felled a massive eucalyptus tree across the tarmac. It looks simple. Johnson, Harris, take a look, Miller orders. Russell and the BAR gunner crawl forward, using a shallow ditch for cover. As they get within 50 yards, Russell freezes. He holds up a fist. Harris stops. Russell points. Tucked into an olive grove just behind the roadblock is the unmistakable, long, slender barrel of a French 75mm gun. It's perfectly sighted to enfilade the entire road. Anti-tank gun, Russell whispers, his voice dry. I see it, Harris mutters. Where's the infantry? As if in answer, a ripple of movement comes from a stone farmhouse on the left side of the road. A machine gun opens up the same heavy thump, thump, thump of the Hotchkiss from the beach. The bullets snap over their heads, kicking up dirt. Contact front! At gun in the trees! Machine gun in the farmhouse! Miller screams, waving the rest of the platoon into the ditches. This is not a token defense. This is a prepared ambush. The Americans are pinned. Mortars. Miller is on the radio. 60mm mortars, grid 249er, farmhouse. Fire for effect. A pair of thwomp sounds come from behind them. Seconds later, 60mm mortar rounds crash into the farmhouse's tiled roof, sending up plumes of red dust and smoke. The machine gun goes silent. Now, the 75, Miller yells. Harris, suppress that crew. Johnson, you're with me. We're flanking right. Harris opens up with the BAR, long, controlled bursts that rake the olive grove. The French gun crew, brave but exposed, fire back. Crack boom! The 75mm fires. But it's firing high explosive, not canister. The shell screams over their heads and explodes in a tree far behind them. They are shooting at the sound of the BAR. Go! Go! Miller, Russell, and 3 other men sprint off the road, leaping a low stone wall into a dry, rocky wadi. It's a perfect covered approach. They run, bent double, for 200 yards, the sound of Harris's BAR and the answering French 75 echoing behind them. They scramble up the far bank and find themselves on the flank of the olive grove. They can see the gun crew 5 French artillerymen in khaki, frantically working the breech of their famous cannon, completely unaware they are about to be attacked from the side. Take 'em, Miller says, his voice ice cold. Russell rests his M1 on the wall. He has a clear shot. He sees a young Frenchman, no older than himself, with a red, non-commissioned officer's stripe, yelling orders. Russell puts his front sight post on the man's chest. He hesitates. This isn't a shadowy figure in a casino. This is a soldier, in broad daylight, doing his job. Crack! Miller fires his M1 carbine. The French NCO stumbles, grabs his neck, and falls. The world explodes. Russell and the other 3 GIs open up. The semi-automatic fire of the Garons is devastating at this range. The French gun crew, armed only with pistols and rifles, are cut down before they can even turn around. Silence. The sudden, ringing silence after a firefight. "Cease fire! Cease fire!" Miller calls. They walk into the gun emplacement. It's a mess. The dead Frenchmen lie tangled around their beautiful brass-cased gun. One of them is a Senegalese soldier, his dark face a contrast to his light khaki uniform. "Good shooting," Miller says, prodding a dead artilleryman with his boot. He looks at Johnson, who is staring at the man he was supposed to shoot. "Don't think about it, son. They started this. We're just finishing it." They clear the roadblock. The advance continues. 2 hours, 300 yards gained, 6 more Frenchmen dead, and 6 more Americans wounded by the machine gun. By nightfall on November 8th, they are exhausted. They dig shallow foxholes in a cork oak forest, still miles from the outer suburbs of Casablanca. The city's anti-aircraft batteries are now firing, their tracers painting desperate patterns in the twilight sky. Flares pop and hiss, casting a ghostly green light over the landscape. They were supposed to be sleeping in French barracks tonight, welcomed as liberators. Instead, they are sleeping in holes, covered in dirt, waiting for an enemy they don't understand to try and kill them in the morning. November 10th, 1942, 7 a.m. Outside Casablanca, the order comes down the line just before dawn. All units will advance, all units. The diplomacy is over. Patton has given the French an ultimatum, and the 6:30 deadline has passed in silence. Now, it's a race. Patton wants to seize Casablanca before the Germans can fly in reinforcements via Tunisia. For PFC, Russell Johnson, hunkered down in his damp foxhole, the order is a grim relief. The waiting, listening to distant, unexplained gunfire was worse than the moving. "On your feet," Lieutenant Miller says, his voice hoarse. "This is it. We're going all the way." This is not the cautious, probing advance of the past 2 days. This is a full-throated assault. To their right, the armoured engines of General Gaffney's Combat Command B roar to life. A column of M3 Stuart light tanks clatters down a parallel road, their small, high-velocity 37mm guns already firing, probing the white-walled villas and factory complexes on the city's outskirts. Johnson's platoon is assigned to support the tanks. Their job is mopping up, a clean, sterile term for the dirty work of clearing out the infantry and anti-tank guns the tanks bypass. The French resistance is no longer a series of roadblocks, it's a fortified line. The main road is blocked by massive concrete dragon's teeth. Behind them, in a sprawling barracks complex called the Groupe d'Artillerie de Marine, the French have dug in. And these aren't just conscripts. They are tough, grizzled veterans of the Légion étrangère, the French Foreign Legion. "Tanks are moving! Follow 'em!" Miller yells. Johnson and his squad run, hunched low, behind the chugging Stuart. The noise is overwhelming. The tank's gun fires CRACK, the 37mm shells punching neat holes in a concrete wall. From an upper-story window, a French machine gunner, heavy, water-cooled, mitrailleuse opens up. The bullets spark and whine off the tank's armour. The tank ignores it. It's focused on a 47mm anti-tank gun hidden in an alley. "Johnson, that window!" Miller screams, pointing. Russell dives behind a stack of wine barrels, the wood splintering as the machine gun pans toward him. He takes a breath, aims, squeezes. The Garand bucks. He fires again, and again. He sees the tracer stream falter. A legionnaire, his face dark with stubble under the Adrian helmet, appears in the window, about to hurl a grenade. Harris, the BAR gunner, stitches the entire window frame with a long, angry burst. The legionnaire vanishes backward. "Move! They're pulling back." They swarm the building, kicking indoors. It's empty. The legionnaires have already fallen back to the next block, leaving only spent cartridges and a few bloodstains. They are professionals, giving ground but exacting a price for every foot. The fight for the suburbs is a bloody, house-to-house brawl. The Americans, green and learning on the job, are clumsy. The French are masters of this kind of warfare. An American Stuart tank, venturing too far ahead, rumbles past an alley. A 75, an anti-tank gun crew had manhandled into a butcher shop, fires at point-blank range. The 75mm shell hits the Stuart's thin side armor and punches straight through. The tank lurches, stops, and a fraction of a second later, the ammunition inside cooks off. The turret is blown 20 feet into the air in a pillar of black smoke and fire. But the Americans have something the French do not: overwhelming numbers and air power. As the battle for the city reaches its peak, a new sound fills the air, a high-pitched, terrifying shriek. It's the sound of SBD, dauntless dive bombers from the USS Ranger. The pilots, furious at the French for the resistance, dive with a vengeance. They hit the El Hank battery, the massive guns that had dueled the fleet, smothering the concrete emplacements in 500-pound bombs. They hit the French infantry strongpoints, and they go back to finish the Jean Bart. The battleship, wounded but defiant, is still floating. The Dauntlesses roll into their dives. The bombs scream down. They hit the battleship again and again. This time, there is no question. The Jean Bart settles into the harbour mud, her bow sinking, her 15-inch guns pointing uselessly at the sky. The loss of the Jean Bart and the El Hank battery, combined with the relentless, grinding assault of Patton's armour, breaks the back of the French defence. By 10 a.m., Russell Johnson's platoon has reached a large, open square. Across the way, a line of French colonial infantry, Senegalese, are forming for a counter-attack. Both sides drop into cover, ready for the final, bloody charge. And then, silence. A single, shrill whistle cuts through the air. "Hold your fire! Hold your fire!" Lieutenant Miller is screaming, standing up from cover. "I said, hold your goddamn fire!" Johnson lowers his M1, his finger still tense on the trigger. Across the square, the French NCO is also standing, his hand raised. A lone French officer, impessively dressed, walks into the center of the square holding a white flag. The fighting is over. In Algiers, Admiral François Darlan, the collaborationist High Commissioner for all Vichy forces and, by a twist of fate, in the city when the other Allied force landed, has finally cut a deal. Under pressure from American diplomat Robert Murphy and General Mark Clark, Darlan has issued a ceasefire order for all of Franc North Africa. In Casablanca, General Noguez, seeing Patton's tanks in his suburbs and with Darlan's order in his hand, has no choice. He capitulates. Russell Johnson stands up. His knees are shaking. He walks slowly into the square. The Senegalese soldiers, their enemies of 5 minutes ago, are also standing, slinging their rifles. They look as confused as he does. A French legionnaire, the man who was probably just shooting at Harris from the window, walks past. He is covered in dust, his uniform torn. He looks at Johnson, his eyes hard. He pauses, reaches into his tunic, and pulls out a pack of cigarettes. He taps one out and offers it to Russell. Russell, stunned, takes it. The legionnaire lights it for him, then lights his own. "Fini," the legionnaire says, his voice a gravelly rasp. "Finished." "Yeah," Russell says, exhaling a cloud of smoke. "Fini." They stand there, in the middle of a burning city, the Liberator and the Defender, two allies who had just spent 3 days trying their best to kill each other. The shock wasn't the landing. The shock was the silence that came after. November 11th, 1942, Armistice Day. The irony is lost on no one. On the 24th anniversary of the armistice that ended the First World War, a war where American and French soldiers had died side by side in the mud of the Marne, and the Argonetha guns in North Africa fall silent. But this is not a celebration. It is an occupation. PFC. Russell Johnson and the 3rd Division march into the center of Casablanca. This is the moment they were promised in the briefings, the triumphant entry. But there are no cheering crowds, no girls throwing flowers, no bottles of wine being passed around. The city is a picture of sullen, stunned silence. The boulevards are lined with citizens, their faces a mixture of resentment, fear, and confusion. They stare at the American GIs, at their M1 rifles and their steel helmets, not as liberators, but as conquerors. As the men who had shelled their harbour, bombed their battleship, and killed their sons. The streets are littered with debris, shattered glass from the naval bombardments, overturned trams, and the burned-out husks of French tanks. The white walls of the villas are scarred by bullet holes and black scorch marks. The smell of smoke and death still hangs heavy in the air. Russell's platoon is put on guard duty at the Hotel Miramar, which is serving as General Patton's official headquarters. He stands at attention as the formal surrender ceremony takes place. General Nogues, the French resident general, arrives in a full-dress uniform dripping with gold braid and medals. He is every inch the proud French officer, but his face is stone. He salutes Patton. Patton, all polish and swagger, returns the salute with a crisp, almost mocking precision. They are allies now. They shake hands for the cameras, two men who, just 24 hours earlier, had been doing everything in their power to kill each other's soldiers. The cost of this 3-day misunderstanding is tallied. The Americans have suffered nearly 1,400 casualties, killed, wounded, and missing. The French have lost far more. Over 3,000 French soldiers, sailors, and airmen are dead or wounded. The French fleet is shattered. The Jean Bart is a smoking wreck. The destroyers, Fougueux, Boulonnais, and Frondeur, are at the bottom of the sea. The GIs, who have done the bleeding, are left to process the impossible. They had been told they were fighting Germans. They had ended up fighting the French. A few days later, the most bitter pill is swallowed. The GIs are told that, to ensure stability and prevent the rest of French North Africa from resisting, a deal has been made. The man the Allies will recognize as the leader of free French North Africa is not Charles de Gaulle, the voice of the resistance. It is Admiral François Darlan, the same Admiral Darlan who was the arch-collaborationist, the man who had served in the Vichy government, who had met with Hitler, and whose orders had just sent thousands of Frenchmen to their deaths fighting the Americans. For men like Russell Johnson, this is the final, incomprehensible shock. He had watched his friends die on Red Beach, killed by men obeying Darlan's orders. Now, that same man was their new ally. Lieutenant Miller, in a rare moment of candor, gathers his surviving men. "Listen," he says, his voice low. "Don't try to understand the politics. It's not our job. Our job was to take this piece of real estate, and we took it. The French fought because they were soldiers, and they were ordered to. We fought because we were soldiers, and we were ordered to. Now, the politicians are talking again." He looks at their faces, no longer the green, nervous boys on the Higgins boat, but hard, tired-eyed veterans. "We're not in France, we're in Africa. The real enemy, the German, is still hundreds of miles away. Get some rest, clean your rifles. This," he gestures to the complicated, allied, occupied, hostile city around them, "was just the beginning." Russell Johnson leans against the wall, his M1 at his side. He thinks of the man in the casino, the private with the phrase book, and the legionnaire with the cigarettes. He has learned the first and most brutal lesson of war. The only people you can truly trust are the men in your own squad, and that an ally's bullet kills you just as dead as an enemy's.